Dune. The titular dunes of Arrakis stretch from one skyline to another, individually dwarfing even the massive mining drone our heroes attempt to evacuate. A dune is a semiotic antecedent for the concept of impossible hostility. Then right before our eyes, this daunting mountain of sand is burst apart into a towering plume by a native sandworm. And in this moment, every neuron in my brain fired off in acknowledgement of the shadow of humility that had just been cast over our characters. Much has been made of Dune's size and scale. It is no fucking joke, the absolute mass of this movie. You could see it on the biggest screen in the world, and the only way to properly experience it would be to stand on the planet Caladan itself. When Rutger Hauer says in Blade Runner, "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe," this is the shit he's talking about. But the devilish trick Denis Villeneuve pulled with Dune is that he does not limit his storytelling to make room for scale, but instead uses it as one of many instruments in a 40,000-piece space opera orchestra. It does this crazy technique where, as things happen to the characters, the ways they react and behave tell us more about them. Years and years worth of blockbuster movies have abused science fiction as an aesthetic only. The pretense of outer space and distant worlds is often just a retooled railroad to characters shooting each other, except with rainbow-colored bullets made of light. It's kitsch. And Dune is so exciting to me because it is the closest a dedicated blockbuster has gotten to capturing the essence of the genre and what it is capable of. In I don't know how long. Sci-fi will mean something different to most people you talk to. I'm just one of many assholes reviewing movies on the internet, but to me it is technology-modifying clashes of identity, politics, and philosophy. At its best, the genre is transported as these cornerstones of humanity remain constant. There's a dual comfort and humbling that all the advances in the world would not absolve the flaws of our flesh and blood. If there is a director who understands this more than Denis Villeneuve right now, I sure would love to know about them. And nowhere is this understanding exemplified more perfectly than through the characterization of Paul. Paul is gifted in every area a character in Dune can possibly be. He's a proficient warrior, beloved by all, has a troop of people grooming him to be a paragon, and his bloodline is a convergence of Atreides royalty and the Bene Gesserit's mystical abilities. One could easily call him a Mary Sue, a term which I'm sure you've never even heard of before this video. However, Paul is not the bore so many perfect characters are because his arsenal of talents does nothing to alleviate what torments him. The impending visions of his destiny mark him a man without the gift of choice, even if that destiny is being awkwardly stitched into a CGI model of a Farron soldier. He sees himself betraying everything he's known and loved without knowing why. He's a eugenics experiment in search of belonging, horrified at where that search is taking him. Dune is a movie of larger ideas and narratives clashing behind the moment-to-moment confrontations. The source material is loaded with politics and history and religion and ethics. Dune is not a story where House Atreides represents white man's burden, and that's it. I mean, that's there, but also it is about how they are humans, but these humans live on a planet called Caladan, which is not Earth, because Earth was irradiated in the Butlerian Jihad, a holy war between the League of Nobles and Omnius, resulting in the destruction of every computer, and also how bagpipes were the only instrument that survived with them. Villeneuve's taken measures to accommodate the impossibly dense nature of the source material, which is necessary but will not please everyone. Frantically dispensing world-building nuggets trying to get everything down like the Lynch one means your movie technically will have more of the original story in it, but as a crude bulleted list of details with no development. This Dune still throws a lot at you, but is far more digestible while leaving room open for you to dig into the implications what you're shown has on the rest of the universe. Instead of the hard lexical nature of Herbert's novel, Dune is very extrapolative, working within the creative limits of film. Instead of a clear-cut, here's what this is approach, where the second the dialogue introducing whatever they're talking about is over, you never think about it again, Villeneuve is trying to take something shown for this much time and illuminate this much lore, Or, and this is the part that might piss people off, an equivalency of impact knowing that lore would give you. Villeneuve's Dune creates a world where you can reasonably assume all of that missing lore still happened and exists, even though it isn't shown. I don't know each and every step that brought us to the political boiling point of the film, but I do know Sardaukar soldiers are anointed with the blood of those who were too weak to serve. This is the beauty of adapting something like Dune. Unless you're one of those people only vaguely familiar with the concept of restraint who wanted Horodowski's version, capturing everything is impossible. How do you decide what to keep? And how, if at all, do you make up for what is left behind? In a book, words are all you have to work with, but filmmaking opens up so many other possibilities to help you do this. I highly recommend this video about Dune's use of musical motif to convey the internal struggles of the characters. It all comes down to if you want details of the world to inform the story, or vice versa. Either is good, either is valid, but the filmmakers need to pick a side and do it correctly like Villeneuve has here. But I'm aware not everyone is gonna see it that way, as well as the root cause of why. Dune is unequivocally a blockbuster, but is unbound by the shackles of audience expectations. It foregoes tropes to instead home in on why those tropes exist in the first place. The sequence of events in Dune and who these characters are seem natural. Even the action does not follow the conventions and structure of what a person might expect from a typical action set piece. In an age where Marvel movies start working on action scenes before the script is even finished, I cannot express how much of a breath of fresh air it is that Dune's action is just as patient and naturalistic as the rest of the film. It's like you pulled the people who made Lawrence of Arabia into the 21st century and gave them the resources of today to make something with the same mentality as the intensely character-driven old epics. Compared to higher, better examples of Villeneuve's craftsmanship, there start to appear a few more cracks in execution. A misplaced line of dialogue, one awkward effect among many others. However, properly emulating this old epic mindset keeps Dune from such imperfections soiling the big picture. I'm clearly on the side believing any cut corners are relative. If Dune were a movie to its own ends, it would be praised for its creativity. Have a little perspective and understand just how much detail and world building is actually communicated to you here. The actual presentation of Dune is stark and brutalist. I love the costumes and rigid, bulky ship designs. The sound design, here's what I have to say about the sound design. There you go. Even the good blockbusters nowadays never seem to really match the production value implied in their budget. And then you have a movie like Black Widow, which cost $40 million more than Dune, and Dune looks 100 times better while also having about 10 additional A-list celebrities to pay. However, to an extent, I can understand people finding the art direction sterile, because almost every choice seems geared toward making it appear less geeky. So if your attachment to Dune is predicated on how you grew up a pariah for liking science fiction when it wasn't popular, my condolences, but this movie is still quite good. It is also the only movie in recent memory with a giant worm. Is it quite a science fiction Lord of the Rings? Well, as you approach being that kind of crown jewel genre epic, the number of things which come down to perceptions of the director's efforts need to go down further than I see happening with Dune. It's still a little too divisive. If anything's holding Dune back, it's structural. There was nothing to suggest in the film's marketing this was only part one of a larger franchise or string of sequels, but that is clearly what this is. Note in the trailers how many of Paul's dream sequences taking place in the future were used to give the impression it would cover more than the first half of the story. Franchises with a overarching through line have been divided into strings of sequels with natural starting and stopping points for each installment to be individually conclusive and satisfying. Lord of the Rings did it, Infinity War and Endgame did it, Kill Bill did it, But Dune's approach is a little stranger than those. Instead of feeling like it's reached a natural stopping point, it just chugs along, fleshing out the story at the same rate of detail until reaching a threshold of, I suppose, running the risk of being too long, and then just stops. Whereas movies usually end because the story has run its course, Dune Part 1 ends because they couldn't make the movie any longer. There is a climax, there are pieces of development ensuing at the end of the film. However, nothing to suggest the events in question are the actual conclusion to anything, and don't carry the weight implying what we're seeing are the most important events of the story. Dune seems made with the mindset that eventually when Part 2 comes out, the ideal viewing experience would be to edit them together into an uninterrupted 6-hour film. Part 1 only ending where it does because it is the least arbitrary place it could have as we wait 2 years for Part 2. A movie Warner Brothers weren't even sure they were gonna make when they released this. I guarantee you they didn't have this level of reservation when making Space Jam 2, but sure, let's just release the first half of Dune and give up if it doesn't do well. But it does beg the question, would people be satisfied if this flopped and we weren't getting anything else? We are in a unique position where Dune is the kind of movie I dream of coming out in terms of how many successes the filmmakers pile on top of each other, with this one glaring uncertainty leaving people questioning how to feel. But for me, well, fundamentally I'll always remember and appreciate Villeneuve's daring melding of blockbuster epics and the core concepts of science fiction I love the most. A movie that fills my brain with such intrigue and wonder, I'm gonna start unironically saying stupid shit, like desert power.
We need to cultivate desert power.
I am officially a Dune goon.